something we've all been waiting for, presentation of compensation and benefits study. Mr. Gresham.
All right. Well, 3 years ago, we actually started talking about doing a study like this, and it's taken us a little while to pull it off, but in conjunction with Warren County government, we were able to do a compensation and benefits study. And I'm very pleased tonight to have with us Rick Campbell, who headed up the study along with his wife Karen, and who couldn't be here this evening. I'm sorry about that. But they've done a very thorough job of taking a look at a wide range of, or the whole range of all of our compensation, whether it's benefits and salaries, our staffing levels, and then actually taking a look at things like how we describe all the jobs, all the job descriptions as well. So I'll let Mr. Campbell take it away.
As long as there's no threats for ballroom dancing at the end.
I love the ballroom dance.
So I'm just saying.
I've tried to get my husband to take it a few times. It doesn't work.
No. Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I'd just like to start off with, whenever I've done these kind of studies for different organizations across the country, one of the key components for success is not only support from bodies such as yourself, but really from the project team having not only a vision on what they want, but also having an action plan to see that that it gets adopted. That doesn't always happen, but otherwise it's just wishful thinking. That a lot of complaining saying we need more money without a vision and a plan in order to see that it gets there. And so that's a credit to Mr. Drescher for, and also the county for kind of taking the steps to proceed in that path. This presentation is mostly going to be a kind of a top level view in the packets that include the study. They are public documents, and I guess they're going to be up on the website here relatively soon for public dissemination. So this is going to be, again, top level, and more details are in the body of the report. The outline of what I'm going to discuss tonight goes from the scope of work on down to the conclusion, a lot of steps in between. The scope of work, what was specified in the RFP, an awful lot of words, but basically it really covers what Mr. Drescher talked about, is really trying to find out where the school district is, and having a plan of where you want to be, and then trying to see kind of a path forward. And that's what you could sum it all up. One thing to take into consideration, this was a regional study, so the intention was not to compare Warren County to Northern Virginia. That would be an apples and oranges kind of comparison. So predominantly we looked at other school districts in the region for comparison, and where Warren County wanted to be placed, relative to that group. This is it's a picture form of the process that we went through. There was a kickoff meeting with Mr. Drescher and the project team to kind of go over the expectation of the goals and the process itself, cover things like who were the comparators. Typically, we are tasked with that process ourselves, but Mr. Drescher and the county had a very specific list on this is the region that we want to compare to. We don't want to be compared to Northern Virginia. So setting that kind of yardstick or goal at the front, kind of defines the rest of the project. You didn't go back later on and say, well, these numbers are not high enough or low enough to justify whatever. We set it at the beginning and then proceeded forward from there. We looked at the salaries of employees where they are right now, the different salary scales to get a baseline, establish where things were at. One of the very important things that Paypoint HR strongly believes in is engaging employees in the process, because at the end of the day, it's their compensation. So finding out from them, what they do on a day-to-day basis was very important to be able to go out in the external market and to the very best of our ability, with their help, to have an apples-to-apples comparison. In addition to what the employees put down for what describing their jobs, we also had a checks and balance system, if you will, have their supervisors, oftentimes principals, to review what they had put down. 95% of the time it's to add things, but there's always exceptions to that as well. We came back a second time to do focus groups to cover ideas that were, not necessarily on the dollar and cents side of things, but also on, the cultural kind of things, on how things can be, improved at the school district. And that covers the areas that we do. On the hard side is more, more my specialty. My background, long time ago, my PhD is in mechanical engineering, so I worked at NASA for a number of years and played with rockets. So I'm on the number side. So a lot of the information that we received was from the school district, where you were at, and digging down into the numbers, but is also going out to surrounding districts and asking them for these same positions. Again, as part of the process is getting employees, involved in telling us what they did, and make sure that we have a fair comparison. What do they pay for these positions? Those numbers were combined and calculated, and that's what came out at the end of the day in the report. Employee outreach. And we already talked a little bit about this. We came to have briefing sessions to introduce the employees to the process. About 500 employees participated. So that's really going through its about 12-page survey explaining, what do they do on a day-to-day basis. That many participants is frankly just outstanding. That they are that engaged and want to be heard. We had later on, as I mentioned, the focus groups that covered, I think it was in the middle of a snowstorm, if I remember right. Still had many people come out and talk about different, like I said, cultural kind of issues that were important to them. Benefits in terms of total compensation, and you can't look at salary alone. The benefits are an increasing portion of the total expenditures. What we found, and there's a long list of things in the report. Some of the, I guess, on the top level, I'd have to say is that the school district's done a very good job at managing employee benefits and trying to do all they can to contain costs. It's not always an easy thing. Lots of different plans, competition from different vendors, and it's beyond my realm of expertise. Fortunately, my wife Karen is the expert on that, and she at one point had her license in doing these kind of things. So when she says that the county's doing a good job, it's not fluff. I mean, it's the truth that is what is happening with the county. In the report, there are other things that were addressed that could be done better, like areas of wellness kind of programs, trying to enhance kind of tuition reimbursement. As things progress, when kids go to college, you can see kind of the bills that people are carrying as they matriculate through school, and then they come out and becoming teachers. They're weighed down with, in some cases, large amounts of debt. So programs that are looking into tuition reimbursement, not only for the school district here, but just nationwide, are becoming an ever-increasing area of importance for boards like yourself, board of supervisors, to consider. Now more onto my specialty. This is the current salary plan, kind of is reduced down as far as possible. On the left-hand side is more of the instructional salary scale for grade 1, and grade 1 is primarily teachers with a bachelor's degree. So it ranges now with beginning level at $43,247, and at 44 years of experience, it goes up to $74,191, with varying degrees of steps, and it's not uniform once you dig through the numbers. So you can see even at like year 4 and 5, it's the same value. That's on the instructional side. On the non-instructional side, many different grades with, in this case, the lowest grade is a grade 17, not a grade 6. So being able to figure out where people are on the scale, and that each person has equal opportunity for growth and advancement. It's a little hard, frankly, to base just on the grade level to figure that out. So one of the things that we did in this process is try to consolidate it and produce kind of a logical order, so that everyone has an equal opportunity for growth, and can be clear cut and transparent. Now, as I mentioned before, one of the things we had the employees fill out, and it's about 500 of them, is what we call a position vantage point. And it's really a fancy word for helping us understand what you do on a day-to-day basis. So we asked a lot of questions. If I did it today, it should take me about 10 minutes, because I've done this 1,000 times. But for most part, it should take most employees less than an hour. And we didn't hear a lot of people saying it took much longer. But having said that, it's really covering, again, we weren't asking them to look at their job descriptions and inform us, on the details of that, because we already had that information. The project team provided it. This is in their own words, what they did on a day-to-day basis. So that was part of the survey. The other part was to look at their knowledge, skills, and abilities, so that we can compare, what does a maintenance worker to a bus driver to Mr. Drescher, for that matter, and how to fairly create an internal equity or an internal hierarchy, just based on knowledge, skills, and abilities. As an independent, kind of unbiased third party, if I just see the numbers, it's not based on personalities or any kind of bias that I would have of one group being better than another. It's really just reflective of, again, their individuals or job titles, knowledge, skills, and abilities. So this is providing us a metric or a yardstick, if you will, on how to internally, rank different job titles. The factors that it considered in the ranking are there on the left, and it produced a score for every job title, which you see a short summary of some of them there on the right. So it goes from, in this case, assistant superintendent was a 165.9, and relative to that, you can see that it's, following a fairly, understandable kind of order, and it went down to the lowest, all employees within Warren County Public Schools. That's one yardstick that we use. It's not the only one. One of the things that we do is 2 independent measures. One is knowledge, skills, and abilities based on what internally what people are saying. But we also look at externally, what are surrounding communities, how do they evaluate or rank these same different titles. Independent, so that we have a way of kind of like a sound check, make sure that there are 2 in there are in agreement. From that, this is a very kind of brief summary, and it goes into more detail in the full report. But what it really boils down to is this is for non-instructional employees, just to be clear. 31, which is more than half of them, count them up, are about near the market, where they should be. What I mean by near market, and this is part of the strategic vision that was laid out by Mr. Drescher and the project team, is strategically they wanted to the school district to be at 60% of the market. And again, the market is the region, not all of Virginia or Northern Virginia or anywhere else. Within the region, they wanted to be at the 60th percentile. Convert that into maybe more layman's terms. So if you have 5 different counties, you'd be third highest out of the 5. So for the bulk of them, employees, Mr. Drescher wanting it to be at the 60%, well, that's where you're at for most employees. So really the job is adjusting the employees that are below market and trying to catch them up where they should be, and then to also look at the ones that are above and finding ways of letting the market catch up to them so that everybody's on an equal playing field. The recommendations, one of the things I touched on earlier is to come up with a salary scale that is clear and transparent for everyone. What you'll see here is a different kind of grading system between W1 to W21. And by chance, since we did a study for the county a few weeks ago, it's identical. So if, for instance, somebody from the county, I'll choose this direction, wants to come and work for the school district, they'll understand. I'm a grade 17 here, and I'm moved to a 17 with the school district. Pay's going to be the same, or the same salary scale. So that was an important feature. The way the scale is set up is to look at the living wage for Warren County. MIT has a nice service where it looks at the cost of living for every city, county in the United States. And for one of the calculations, so they look at the price of housing, the price of food for an individual. So that's what we set the minimum of grade 1 there is $12.18 an hour. The people that's going to affect really are the lowest wage earners. And the dollar amount that that it's going to would cost to move people up there is typically the smallest amount, but can also make the biggest bang for the buck, if you will. The steps between grades set at 5%, and the width is uniformly 60% wide. So everyone can kind of have an idea of how the progression is for their grade. Everything's the same width. It's a standard. One group that was set apart a little bit was what I will loosely call the administrative. So that'd be the different directors, principals, and that sort. For that, it was a little different because the minimum amount to actually attract those individuals caused the scale to be a little different. That's how it was set. The width was the same 60%, and the difference between each step, if the math is done, it's $2,000 between each step. The instructional scale. This is again part of the project team and Mr. Drescher's strategic vision on where he wants the school district to be at. And that is really the main competitor or main driver is Frederick County, point blank. So having said that, the core group that was identified that they need to be competitive with is in the range between year 5 and year 15. That is losing, employees and teachers in that group is painful. I guess that's probably the best word for it, is painful. So in that case, that is how the scale was set to reflect, to be kind of at the same level, or as Frederick between years 5 and 15. And then the rest of the scale kind of evolved from that. Physical impact of this. So as I mentioned, the living wage portion is our, and we had the same thing, just to be clear, there was a group at the county that was also fell into this, living wage recommendation. This would affect 30 employees, and the total cost of $63,260, just to raise everybody up to $12.18 an hour. Relatively small amount of money. And then it's broken down into different groups there, with the largest group being the instructional group at $1.6 million. In total, the recommendations cover 613 positions at a cost of $2.3 million. This was kind of alerted to when we made the presentation to the county that it was going to be a bigger number than the recommendations, similar recommendations for the county, so they have some awareness of this. One of the things that in the notes that I wanted to bring to your attention, this doesn't include the additional cost of benefits. This is salary only. And second, this is really to adjust the scales. So this isn't talking about really individual employees where they're falling in the scale. In the case of where salaries have been frozen for a number of years, that's not taken into consideration. So I wanted to highlight that as well. Staffing levels. So what we did for staffing levels as part of the survey, we asked the surrounding communities, school districts, how many employees did you have in these different areas? And then looked at based on the number of buildings, the number of students, all those different kind of factors, and to see where you were staffed appropriately, staffed higher than other areas, and staffed lower than other areas. So some of the recommendations based on, again, on those factors, school size, the number of schools, the number of leadership positions. The recommendation would be to add 3 more, add additional school secretaries, add another physical therapist, and the biggest one there is add 63 more teachers. Where there's reductions, goes for instructional assistants, resource teachers, maintenance employees, occupational and speech therapists. That more or less concludes slides I had. I really want to thank, Mr. Drescher, Melody, the entire project team. It's, not all our clients are, we enjoy working with, and I can just, it doesn't do me any benefit to say that I enjoy working with the team, but I do. And I think you have a good group. And probably even more importantly than that, they are really interested in making the school district better. They not only have a vision, as I mentioned at the beginning, but also a plan in order to get there. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer.
Yes. Before you have any questions, just to make a comment. What our plan is at this point is we now have the report. We have the details and the numbers to begin working with. We do have a kind of a generalized idea of what our steps are, but we need to do a little more work. So we planned for a work session again next Wednesday for the school board, and that's open. It will be over at the 15th Street meeting place. So at that point, we'll dig into the numbers a little bit more deeply, try to explain. I hope I can explain some of this stuff, how it's figured out. It's nice to have a third party come in unbiased about this is where you guys are. And really appreciate it. I know it's just flashed up here for the first time, but one of the things that I think we're going to truly appreciate is the revision of our scales. It makes it a lot easier to understand. People have you can see where you're going to go in your career. It's still a matter of having money to do steps and things like that, but the scale itself, if we can adopt this or something very similar, it's certainly up to the board to do, I think it will help us in the long term. But our next big job is to look at how we take those recommendations at 2.6 or 3 or whatever it was.
You just keep going.
6, 8, 9.
That's without adding all the additional.
Yeah. That's without the additional staff, and I would just make a comment that, you know, for as long as I've been here, I have felt like we do an awful lot with less. And seeing these numbers come out this way, you know, I almost can't imagine our school district with 63 more teaching bodies in it. Just what the impact that would have on students and what we'd be able to offer. So that needs to be part of the plan too, as to how we look at what our most prioritized needs are and how we can begin putting that in our budget as well and what that is. So I don't know if you have any questions for Mr. Campbell that he can try to answer, but I certainly appreciated what his team has done and helped us try to figure out. So that's the next plan. Next Wednesday we'll have an opportunity to dig into this a little deeper, and I'm hoping to come to you with some recommendations about first steps.
Well, it's been a long time coming, and I'm glad we had this study done. I mean, we wanted to do something for years, and we've been discussing it for years, and this sort of validates it all, so. Nice to have this. Any questions or discussion?
No, I haven't.
We could- Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you.
Do you have a long way to travel tonight?
Couple hours.
Drive careful.
Thank you.
All right, take care.